Destination R.E.A.L. And I'm very happy to be here sharing with you this presentation. When we talk about Destination R.E.A.L, we talk about future-ready education, education for the next generations or something like that. So this is where you can find me, apart from where Lynn has said. As a global educator and consultant, I do rely a lot on my professional learning network. And you can find me on LinkedIn 24/7. If you like the ideas I'm sharing, if you're also passionate about a new form of differentiation, come on, join the tribe and start looking at reality in a different way. And well, I want to know a little bit about you, so you can use the chat box freely to tell me a little bit about you. Where in the world do you teach? Do you teach younger students? Do you teach older students? Okay, tell me whether you use AI in your lessons, so that I can accommodate whatever I'm saying to your needs in a little way. So to get started, let's have a little game. This is the real or fake game. So what I want you to do is just write T or F or R or F as I show you some images. Real or fake? Image number 1, real or fake? What do you think? Use the chat box. Image number 2. Real or fake? What do you think? Think about the questions that are coming to your mind. Think about that, the processes that you experience as you see the pictures. Image number 3, what do you think? Real or fake? And last but not least, image number 4, real or fake? I'm sorry to tell you that you'll have to defer gratification for a while, because we will continue with the presentation until I really reveal the true answers. So this is the itinerary that we are going to be developing today. I will give you some kind of a background context that has to do with generations. I will be putting together some notions about the new generations, the emerging generations, and GenAI, and I will be talking about the real framework that you can use to really help learning and do more teaching in an effective way. So Q&As at the end. And by the way, if this comes to your mind and this is your question, will I be introducing specific GenAI tools? Sorry to tell you, no, because you have plenty of great ideas in many other sessions. Ron introduced some of them. And in a nutshell, what I want you to do is to concentrate on the framework and to remember this. In case of doubt, any GenAI can help you get some tools that will be more updated than whatever you can get right now from it. So let me get started with a little bit of storytelling. The year is 2023, and I'm on vacation in San Bernardo del Tuyú, a little town by the sea in the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I'm there with my long-lasting friend, Marcela. We have been friends for more than 40 years. And every summer, we have the pleasure of talking about education and having fun together. Well, somehow. And it was the year 2023 when I was like just peeping at LinkedIn, and I got this idea that something huge was coming. And I told Marce that time, Marce, generative artificial intelligence is coming. And you know what Marce said? We're on holiday, Sil. And I really realized that perhaps that too will be something part of the past. But for the past 2 years, we have been dealing with this new normal pendulum in which we have been considering generative artificial intelligence either a friend or a foe. And we have been discussing that. And just a couple of weeks ago, in our summer vacations, same place, same people, same conversation, I told Marce, DeepSeek has entered the LLMs market, and I expected the answer, because this is how we tend to react. Like, we tend to ignore the impact that any new technological tool has on our teaching and on our students' learning. I'm sure that you got the answer and you guessed it. So what's in it for us? What should we do? Is it going to be harder this time? Well, let me tell you something. We have been trained, most of us have been trained to recreate theory of education. So I believe it is a fantastic time to create knowledge, to create theory of education, and to become those voices that will help future generations of educators and learners do whatever they have to do in a better way. So having said that, as I am reading that you belong to the most diverse cultures and that your students also vary enormously, remember that you are professional educators, so adapt to your communities before you adopt any idea. So let me go for some facts. And in the meantime, think about this. True or false? Keep thinking about that. But remember that apart from teaching a language, what we are doing really is teaching our students for their future. And we are teaching students for the future of work, not just teaching content, ELT or ESL. So what about our learners? No matter how different they seem to be, what I can tell you is that they are not generic, but that there is one characteristic that you have to remember, that they are generationally specific, and they are globally generationally specific. So I'm going to discuss this a little bit later on. So bearing this in mind is very important in our to reach our destination, because it doesn't matter what tools we have, if we cannot get the signal and we don't know where we are standing, it will be very difficult to get to our destination. So to get started, what should we know about the next generations of learners? And this is where I want to introduce this R.E.A.L approach to you. Why R.E.A.L? Because I want my teaching to be relevant, that prepares students for real-world challenges. I want it to be ethical, and ethical has to do with how I want my students to be ready for being digital citizens, for being citizens of two words, and how they are going to integrate seamlessly generative artificial intelligence into their lives, because the future of work will include generative artificial intelligence. I want my students to know how to deal with change. So my teaching has to be adaptive, in which I can get them to rely on technology, and I can teach them to develop the habits of dealing with technology or not using it at their own will. And last but not least, it has to be learner-centered, considering the next generations and their cognitive and social emotional growth. So are you there? Just a word that has resonated with you in the chat will help us continue with this idea. And let me move on. So time to discuss what a generation is, because I'm sure that you have all been wondering about this. And to tell you the truth, it is not a new concept. It was Carl Mannheim who, about 100 years ago, talked about a group of individuals being influenced by major historical events of an era, and that because of that, they perceive reality in a different way. Let me show you what a generation is. Exactly this. The filters that you wear as you start trying to make sense of reality, and you develop these filters, you develop this collective conscience in your formative years, in your late primary and secondary, and this makes you just feel one with others who have experienced the same historical events. Another group of sociologists in America talking about this at the turn of the century, they added one more element, this idea of a collective persona, feeling one with others. Strauss and House studied generations and why generations couldn't work together. They couldn't just relate. And again, the filters were interfering in their relationships. So let's move on a little bit here, apart from talking about this new student identity that considers sociological aspects, as I have said, and psychological aspects, to understand that this does not put aside freedom, because any individual will relate the way he or she wants with reality. So we are just talking about populations of individuals. And this is the generational spectrum. Considering different historical facts, generations take like from 15 to 20 years time, and their like laps are shorter. And here you have the whole set of generations that you can find actively interfering or just coexisting in any educational or work ambit. And their connection with technology is also different. What I am adding here are the cuspers, or people who are standing in between generations, because the changes from one generation to other are not drastic. The differences are blurred. But what I want you to consider this time is that we are dealing with two generations of learners, Gen Zers and Alphas, that our youngest colleagues in education are Gen Zers, and our leaders will be Gen Zers soon, and that their perceptions, their filters will be, in a way, affecting the way in which they carry out everything they have to do. Going on to the alphas are that generation that is starting secondary school and that was born as from 2010. They don't know of a world without Instagram. They don't know of a world without TikTok. And they don't know of a world, or they don't remember it in some cases, without generative artificial intelligence of any type. So this is very important to understand how we should address their needs more effectively. Now, the good thing is that we have just started in 2025 what has been named beta generation. In fact, it was predicted to start by Mark McCrindle in the year 2005, around 2025. But the good thing is that probably he got it right just because of the appearance of generative artificial intelligence. So going back to this, when we think of why we should adapt our teaching to their needs, it is because future ready, again, will be absolutely different from the way in which we perceived it while we were in our formative years. If that is okay, and any word like resonates with you or any idea, you can use the chat. Just type down there those words that are like calling your attention. All right. Now, if we move on, and here is the idea, let's see if you can get this quiz. Little brain break. Can you get it? Thinking about a different type of teaching. Yeah. Before generative artificial intelligence and absolutely after generative artificial intelligence. So this is why I am talking about GenerAItions. Right. So what can we say about the emerging gens that you don't know? Well, of course, you know that they are visual because they want to perceive information in the most visual format. And look at the way I'm passing on information to you, a lot of information in a very visual way. They are global in the sense that sharing the same historical events like a pandemic makes them have the same perceptions of or filters. And the good thing about this is that we have shared global problems that we have to face, but we also have lots of possibilities of finding shared solutions. And last but not least, we have this idea of being digital, which has nothing to do, or which complements, rather than having nothing to do, I would say, which complements the idea of just the 2 digits that they use to interact with screens, but also the way in which information is stored and used. So their life, and this is why we find it so difficult to understand them at times when they seem to be so tech savvy, and at the same time, for instance, they don't know how to carry out the easiest tasks online or in their programs. It is that they are not either or. It is that they are and both. They are inhabitants of two worlds. And as they are, they really inhabit contradictions. So you will see that they seem to be very active and daring, but at the same time, they seem to be risk averse. And dealing with those contradictions is a great challenge that we educators have every day. But in order to understand their way of thinking and to get into those classes, I want you to think about maps and get into your destination in without digital tools. What about reading a map? What skills were practiced as we read a map, as we traveled with maps? Thinking about destinations. You can use the chat box to just write down your ideas there. Think about this: learning to deal with uncertainty, problem solving, making quick solutions, having to think of wholes and not of parts. All that was rehearsed every time. Geographical intelligence, everything was developed every time we had to transfer information from reality to a map, interpret it, and make decisions. Those were skills we were rehearsing. Now, what happens when everything is done digitally? And this is how everything is done in the new gen's lives. So think about life with others, with delivery, on demand, with support, constant feedback, immediate feedback like the one AI provides, and with generative artificial intelligence that can also provide scaffolding to activities. Point number one, always emotional understandings and emotional self-awareness is important. So either one way or the other, as teachers or students, Maslowing before blooming is essential. So our lessons definitely will have to deal with listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and we will have to do our best there. And we will be professionally challenging our students according to their language difficulties. But besides, we will need to be preparing them for communication as a 21st century skill and reading and writing effectively. And in all of these elements, we need to add to students' preparation the generative artificial elements of generative artificial intelligence. So this will have to be present. Is it okay with you? Are you following? All right. If you have any question, remember to add it to the chat box. So the solutions, are you there? What is important here is the questions that came to your mind. Selfie monkey, real situation, legal situation. As a lawyer, I loved it. A monkey in a reserve stealing a camera and taking a picture. Who does the image belong to? A very, very real legal claim with a real dilemma. There's one, another reserve, and in this case, the picture is real as well, but real from the point of view of the image. Did you get it right? What is fake here is the intention. The monkey is being deceived. The monkey is not taking the selfie. In this case, there is food behind the camera. Real or fake? Number 3. What did you say there? Did you get it? absolutely fake, generative artificial intelligence. And this one, real or fake? All right, the answer is real in the digital world, part of the campaign for Women's Day done in one of McDonald's sites. So this is what we need to prepare our students for, to ask themselves questions that will lead them to discover the truth behind of what they see, especially when the information they consume is basically visual in the first stage. So I want you to tell me if you agree with me. Who's there? If you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So we all share the whats. We share the same whys. Let's go for some hows. Are you there? Are you with me? Okay. So let's go for the different ways. I would love to introduce Mark Prensky here. You know who Mark Prensky was? Digital native. He coined the term. Turn of the century, and Mark Prensky was talking about a different type of generation, Gen Zers, that would just know of a world without, that they would not know of a world without the internet. So what did Mark Prensky talk about? He talked about post-biologically evolved capabilities, and he said that Gen AI was a new human next capability. And he talked about the power that Gen AI has to move our students who are so immediate from imagination to instantiation with all the powerful opportunities for teaching and learning that the whole situation provides. And he talks about the newly evolved collective mind in which everybody is participating and collaborating and curating what is going on. Now, he also talked about this, and I won't read it, but you can do it. And definitely, whenever there was a change in technology and people started putting up their voices against it, guardrails did not work. So let's continue our way towards this, the synergy of human intelligence and generative artificial intelligence. And mind you, you still have your room there. There is plenty of room for you and your talent and your ability, because, you know, we are creating the rules of education, the new pedagogy of education. So let's go for in real. I want to share something very recent. Common Sense Media, an organization that studies the impact of technology in students, carried out a survey January 2025, yesterday. No, not yesterday, but sort of. And you know what they said or what they discovered? Well, they discovered that in their sample, a third of the adolescents, the Gen Z and alphas, questioned in connection with fake news, had given it a click and clicked on or passed on fake information. 1/3 couldn't separate reality from what was fake. Think about the implications for the world of work. Think about the implications for the future. Now, 6 out of 10 did not think that the companies involved in the creation of social media or participating there would take care of their well-being. Social emotional well-being was being disregarded by these companies according to the sample in the survey. And last but not least, 3/4, 3 out of 4 of the interviewees wanted to have more protections and to have the governments do something about what was going on. And you know what? This reminded me of a survey at school, and my students did not know the students that are being questioned in the survey, but my students were pleading school authorities to do something to separate them from their cell phones and their interest in social media. So we have plenty of room to create, to help, to develop, and to take care of them. All right. Here are my students. We are talking about real and giving them real opportunities that prepare them for real everyday challenges, working on the true or fake, real or fake game that we have played is very important. And in the same way that you have been thinking about the questions that you have been asking yourselves, and you have been trying to figure out whether the situations were true or false through gamification, this is how I help them get ready in my English classes. Another thing that I do here, you have the image in case you want to get a screenshot and you want to find out more about this as well. And you can develop anything for any of the skills and any of the different stages in the learning, thinking about this framework I'm giving you. Make them focus on the challenges and make them rehearse those skills they will need for the future. Real or fake? All right, this is another one that can be used with younger students because they don't need to go into the internet, but they can see the reflection of the person taking the photograph in the glasses. This is a real one, winter vacations. This reminds me of how tired I am at this time of the year. All right, so this one, real or fake? Real or fake? What do you think? All right, this is real. And I love this image of the Choluteca Bridge to help students understand change of paradigm and how we can talk about disruption and connect this to any other historical situation that implied trying to understand that things change from one day to the other and we need to adjust and adapt. And what happens when we don't and we are too strong on the structures. Something that brings about education. Okay, so you know it. Okay, let's go for the E. The E starts for this one, ethical. So as a lawyer, I can tell you, you know the presumption of innocence? Ignore it. Assume that whatever you get has been done with generative artificial intelligence. And instead of using apps to find the cheating, look for evidence of learning. What is it that students are learning? That is the search you have to do. And forget about trying to find human elements there because an AI just as humanize.ai can make any piece of writing look real. Okay, an activity that I do and I use with my students, considering the ethical aspects, I ask them to campaign. First of all, I'm giving you the name of a photographer that tries to show contrast, reality, and campaigns for human rights through his images. And then I use generative artificial intelligence, any app that deals or any AI that deals with images can help them do this. Think of their own world contradictions, explain how they create that, and create wonderful presentations that deal, on the one hand, with all the tools they have to deal with, that help them to think critically, but at the same time that help them campaign and inhabit the world they are in an active way. So this has been hosted. I don't remember which one was it. It was Genially or Canva, but you can find that out because you know better perhaps. A has to do with being adaptive. Your teaching has to be adaptive in the sense that sometimes you plan, and if you fail to plan to fail, but plan to change as well. I started in one of my literature classes with my students dealing with Greek myths. And we started creating and writing down like a description of a mythical hero or heroine. But then, with the advent of generative artificial intelligence, I could get my students to randomly get together and collaborate, feed generative artificial intelligence with their heroes and heroines, and get generative artificial intelligence to create something like this, a play fully created, an old ancient Greek drama created by generative artificial intelligence, in which, from the description, which was what students could do at that time with their possibilities, to expanding their potential with the scaffolding of generative artificial intelligence. We had the chorus, we had everyone there. There was a lot of self-directed learning, and they loved creating their masks and finding out how to dress up everything as part of the project that had a very small objective and ended up being a whole festival of Dionysus with lots of ancient Greek food, and not the food that you can find today, but ancient Greek food included in our celebration. Sometimes it also happens to me, more often than not, that technology fails, and being ready for that and training them to move on and that things can be done without technology is equally essential. And I don't know if you're aware with the Roof Goldberg competition. I'm not going into the details because, I mean, you can find out everything. You have information in your hands. But this is something that works very well. Roof Goldberg was an inventor that created very complex machines to do very simple things. And there is a competition that is fantastic. So I try to give my students, when technology fails, a very simple task in which they have to fulfill this task through very, very complex activities with whatever they have at hand. At the same time, what is valued there is how they work on creativity, on a making attitude or a maker's attitude, and how they can learn from trial and error and persist in their learning, even though things may not work at first. So this is another great way of having students acquire abilities even when technology fails. All right, the L, last but not least, has to do with cognitive and emotional self-regulation, basing ourselves on the learners, on the different learners that we are interacting with and the difficulties they have and how they have to learn. And Monica is going to deal with this tomorrow. How we can give them tools to learn to self-regulate. From the cognitive point of view, and this is another word that I want you to just remember, we have to think about heutagogy. Heutagogy has to do with a new way of understanding, which is not pedagogy or andragogy, but has to do with these learners who have different filters and how they want to learn when all the information is in their hands. And last but not least, when we talk about self-regulation, here we have to think about the importance of developing flexible mindset classes, classes in which yet becomes a mantra. When students come up to you and they say, I don't know how to do it, well, tell me what you know, tell me what you know well, or tell me where you're standing, tell me what you understand. When they say, I can't write this word, you cannot write this word yet. And you will see that the moment you start introducing that vocabulary in your classes and the way you force those little words into your students, the abracadabra appears. You create, as you speak, you create a different world. There's another one which you can use Let me think of the other words that I was going to provide you. Another one is try. Give your students the possibility of trying out. You don't know. Everything is being created. Let them co-create with you. I wouldn't have had that wonderful project if they hadn't helped me with it. So the more freedom, controlled freedom that you can give them, the better. All right, one more idea here. Incidental or collateral learning. Well, this is something that from the point of view of pedagogy and self-directed learning, it is something that students are already acquiring just because they are there interacting with generative artificial intelligence. They are having extensive reading and language exposure, sometimes better used than others, but they are having it. They are learning the structure of written discourse, and a generation that is very horizontal because of the life skills rehearsals they have done needs this to organize ideas, to be able to know why first is first and how to organize, for instance, the ideas in a discussion or a paragraph. And this is something that those who are dealing with academic writing know very well, how difficult it is to get our students to write coherently and cohesively. Talking about social, emotional learning. Sometimes I like interacting with these large language models, these programs that are so sophisticated that are created to imitate the way we think, just because sometimes I feel that they have me in higher regard than my own family. So having said that, the manners that they learn and the vocabulary they learn is great. But mind you, we also have to think about the biases and how they adhere, how models adhere to perceptions, to ideologies, and geopolitical structures are also present there. So again, we are training our students to deal with the real world, and both the good manners and vocabulary are there together with the possibility of using it for evil. So it's not about what they get, but the use you give to it. And then, of course, you have task response strategies, and they are acquired passively as well. All right. So what about the critical thinking and Bloom engineering?
Sylvia, sorry for interrupting. If you can wrap up in about a minute, then we will have more time for questions and answer.
All right. I may advance a little bit with the questions. I know that there will be a couple of 1 or 2 questions, but I prefer to finish with the ideas and then I'll speed up and see where we can do it. Thanks for the warning, Lynn. All right. So anyway, I'm getting to the end of it. Let me see. I was talking about Bloom and thinking how in any activity we could think of Bloom, because I'm sure that you've all been there, that you have seen, you have worked with your students, your this or that questions, and going deeper into the would you rather, so from nouns to verbs and choices that can move on from one stage to the other, or truth or dare, and campaigning for their own objectives having to do with providing their own solutions to real world problems. But above all, what we need to work on is the whys and getting our students to see why they choose A or B and support their choices. And last but not least, and in a flexible mindset spirit as well, this idea of what if, trying a different reality, sociological imagination, thinking that they can present better responses. And what if applies to every activity we can do in class in any skill, either 21st century or language skill. So let's go back to this. Remember the framework, just use your generational filters and wear your glasses for making your teacher more real, relevant. Remember the real world challenges, the true and false things that we did. Ethical, remember all the challenges that we were mentioning in connection with biases, attitudes, and thinking about what is ethical and what is not. Think about adaptive use of technology according to needs, to your students' needs, and to prepare them for the plan B. And last but not least, this question of fostering students' cognitive self-development and social emotional growth. Barriers, many, but the way forward is through. And what I want you to remember, and I'm just getting to the last slide, so Lynn, don't panic. Technology will not replace you. Technology will not replace us. It will be really transformational. So this is me. This is where I can continue interacting with you and your ideas and adding this generational mindset to whatever field of interest or expertise you have, and collaborating with global projects, because generations are global. Remember that you can find me there. That is my professional learning network. I'm there 24/7. So really connect, befriend, it works. And one more thing, if you want to test yourselves, just a little game, have a look at the slides all together and check if you remember a couple of ideas. If you're taking home something that you remember, this can be a lovely, lovely, lovely rally robin or round robin, depending on how you implement this in your classes. All right, so thanks.